play with confidence. Serves it inside 50.
Inside 50, good hands.
Drilling it into centre half forward. That was end-to-end football at its best.
Back-to-back goals either side of quarter time.
They have done it, the Bulldogs!
I'd find somebody for you. There ain't no wall I will run through. In your corner when I'm ringing the bell. Come hell or high water. I'd find somebody for you.
Yes, g'day Waffle fans, welcome one and all to another edition of Around the Waffle. And if you're wondering why are we in front of a black wall, well, we're in a different place. Obviously, we're not in our usual studios at the Hen House in Osborne Park. We're taking the show on the road in 2026. We're here at Mineral Resources Park, not only the home of Perth, but also the West Coast Eagles, who are riding high after 3 wins in a row. And they're looking to make it 4 against East Perth this weekend. We'll preview that game and more as we head into round 5 of the Waffle and round 6 of the Waffle W. Paul Denholm's my name. Great to have your company as we take Around the Waffle on the road for the first time in 2026. And joining me is Denham Melrose, joining me on that long circus stream on that long winding road. How are you, Denham?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me. We were great together on the broadcast over the weekend, so good to be back at Around the Waffle.
Man, it was tremendous, that game. 1 point the margin in the end. Can the Eagles do it again? There's a lot of buzz around the Eagles Waffle side, and rightfully so, because of the way they're going, how they're finally able to be a competitive side and get that team balance between the non-AFL listed and the AFL listed players. There's a buzz around the club, isn't there, as far as the Waffle side is concerned?
Absolutely there is, yeah, and so there should be. I mean, I think that, the last couple of years, probably even since 2019, there's been a lot of injury trouble at West Coast, whether through the AFL or Waffle or both. And it's good to see them finally have a healthy list this year, obviously, as well with the added list spots. But a mostly healthy list has allowed them to have up to 18 listed players, and we're reaping the benefits.
But on the subject of the Eagles' opponents, East Perth, we'll be speaking with Hamish Brayshaw. We went on location to Leederville Oval earlier this week, and that game is set to be an absolute barnstorm. I make no mistake about that. We've got a big preview of round 5 coming your way. We're also going to play an interview I conducted with Anjelique Raison from the East Fremantle Football Club. Of course, East Fremantle's WAFL W team have a big game on Friday night against Perth, the first of 4 straight home games for the Sharks, and some of your questions on our socials as we take Around the Waffle on the road for the first time in 2026. Let's go now to some of the big news during the week, Denham, and it was all about the state squad in the lead up to this weekend. The Kia Waffle state game taking place at Sullivan Logistics Stadium on May 16, and it's an extended 32-player squad that they've announced, including potential 10 debutants in the side.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to see this one come out and study some of the names and who didn't make it, of course. And there were a couple of names that I thought might have been a little bit stiff, and a couple of names that it was really quite cool to see in there. I'm sure we'll speak about it over the next couple of minutes, but Bailey Rogers not being in it was a surprise, I thought. I know that we watched, of course, Jackson McLaughlin on the weekend, and he was fantastic. He's made a good start to the year. And wasn't in that side. But then on the flip side of that, it's awesome to see guys like Tardrew and Savini make it. Will Reedy, of course, it doesn't mean they'll make the team themselves.
And Zach Mainwaring as well from Claremont. He could follow in his late dad's footsteps. Chris Mainwaring, who captained the state team back in 1991.
Wouldn't that be a story? Yeah, it's quite cool. And also, of course, to see Pearson become a 6-time state player, Jesse Turner and Zach Guadagni 5 times. So yeah, it's very cool to see these guys that have done it before, and of course that might be doing it for the first time.
They've really followed that balance of last year, where they went for a really new look game plan, pace orientated, and they had 16 debutants in that side that beat South Australia by 30 points in Adelaide. And it looks as though Adam Reid and the state selectors are retaining that philosophy, because they're playing for a lot of pride, but they're playing for something more, and they want to have the best side out there to make this formula work. And I reckon WA Football and the chairman of selectors, and of course Adam Reid, the coach, have done a wonderful job in putting together this squad. Of course, it's 23. The team of 23 will be finalised very shortly. 9 are going to be very unlucky to miss out.
Yeah, they sure will. And I like the point you make there about the pace and what worked last year. And I wonder if that's part of the reason that a Bailey Rogers doesn't make it. If you emphasise speed, pace, breaking the lines, then if that's the winning formula, then there's no reason not to stick to it.
Let's take a look at some more WA state stars. This time the Academy stars in the WAFL W competition that stood out over the weekend. They had a practice game against Carlton's VFLW side at Icon Park last Sunday, and of course some great prospects in the West Australian side, along with WA Football State 18's girls coach Kate Orme, former Claremont champion, and of course they had a good win over the Carlton VFLW side. Their Orme assistant coach in that side, which prevailed by 46 points over the Blues on Sunday. So some really good signs for the girls' state 18s heading into national championship season.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see. I mean, WA women's footy's in a fantastic place at the moment, in a great space, and there's a lot of these young girls that are coming through, and in particular, Cara, I'm a massive fan of, and I think she's she's a great player. So I think it's awesome to see these girls repping the state and not just doing so at the level, but also winning and setting ourselves up for a big couple of months.
And it rubs off as well on the senior players in the WAFL W sides as well, especially those that are looking to be picked up by an AFLW club. Speaking of, Eliza Riley from Code Sports broke a story on Monday, Tuesday, that Jamie Henry from Swan Districts is unlikely to get picked up in next Monday's AFLW draft. Gee, that is a heartbreaker, and I feel like Gordon Ramsay going on a meltdown, but what more does Jamie Henry have to do to get picked up on an AFLW list? She's tearing it up this season. Same case for Jamie Harkin, but more so for Henry, who's averaging 35 disposals a game and leading our Player of the Year votes by a mile. What are the AFLW selectors missing at this stage? I fear that they're missing something that they're not seeing out of Jamie Harkin. I certainly am not, or Jamie Henry rather, I'm certainly not missing something. Why is she not getting picked up? I would love to know. She is one of the best in the WAFL W competition. She's going to be very unlucky not to get picked up in that draft next Monday, and I reckon those AFLW selectors are going to be ruining the day that they missed out.
Yeah, I wonder if it's... I mean, I think the knock they have on her is her speed, but I think she's proven enough that she doesn't need it, does she? She's done it at a level for a long time, and she did it again on the weekend. She is absolutely dominating. So I don't see the speed as such an issue when... if you win 39 disposals at any level, you probably don't need the speed, do you? You're doing enough.
You've got the physicality. You've got the
right.
physicality. You apply physical pressure, and you might not have the speed, but your physical presence around the contest is a real good asset to her game, and that's what makes up for her lack of speed. So she's going to be very stiff if she doesn't get picked up on next Monday in the AFLW draft. Now, of course, there wouldn't be WAFL news without suspensions. Of course, it was reported on Tuesday, first by Sport FM, that Greg Clark, the Subiaco captain, would miss 4 weeks. He was offered a 4-week suspension via a late bump on Brendan Walker during the Peel Thunder game. That can be reduced to 3 weeks with an early plea. It looks as though he has accepted the plea and will miss 3 weeks, including that big game against South Fremantle. But we're also hearing that Alec Waterman of Claremont, who was reported for a hit on East Fremantle ruckman Eric Benning, is going to challenge his 3-week suspension in an effort to be available for the game against Swan Districts.
It'll be fascinating to see whether Waterman gets off. I don't think necessarily that Claremont need him as much as Subi need Greg Clark. I think that Subi's such a young side. There are a lot of kids coming through, and they've certainly lent on the experience of the Lions' older lads. And whether or not Greg Clark not being there for the next 4 weeks, I think that could be a huge loss for them. In the Waterman space, I think that they're able to replace him. It's no secret Claremont's reserve side is doing unbelievably well.
Absolutely.
Rory Luscombe kicked a lazy 6 goals, 5 on the weekend. 25
Could be another
touches,
option in that
12
forward line against Swan Districts on Saturday.
Absolutely, I think it's almost a like for like. He's obviously still 190 centimetres. He can play that similar role, and maybe not to Alex, starring efforts, but I think that's a position that's more easy to replace than Greg Clark and Subi. I think he's so important for what they do.
We'll keep everybody up to date with those reports during the next couple of days before they take the field in their respective matches. Claremont taking on Swan Districts and Subiaco battling South Fremantle. And those games we're going to preview right now here on Around the WAFL, round 5 of the Sullivan Logistics WAFL Premiership season. You can see it live on 7+. And our preview coming to you from Mineral Resources Park as we take Around the WAFL on the road for the first time in 2026. Round 5 at 1:10 at Lane Group Stadium, live on 7+. It's Peel Thunder and West Perth. Both are losing runs at the moment. West Perth are looking to avoid their 5th straight loss. Peel Thunder in a bit of trouble. They have not won since round 1.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think this one could genuinely go either way. If West Perth were going to get up, this is probably the one they've been looking forward to and sort of circling. They obviously would have hoped to get up over Swans 2 weeks ago as well, but this is probably the one on their calendar. And on the radar, I wonder if they just go all guns blazing. Let's bring back in Shane Nelson, of course, had 38 touches and 8 marks in the reserves, and Luke Meadows, 32 touches and 6 tackles. Surely they have to come back in.
Would they bring back Keegan Nott as well? Because he hasn't found a lot of form in that forward line in the last few weeks since the season began, and hence why they dropped him to the reserves for that game against South Fremantle on Sunday. So I wonder if there's going to be any balance in that side. What I can present a case for West Perth for is they've got to be more desperate, and I reckon they can. They don't want to be losing any more games. And they've got a good formula of young players in that side. Kobe Lacroix, who made his debut last Sunday, good marking prowess inside that forward 50. And I also think those midfielders can make that balance. Kane Bevan, he's leading the charge. No doubt about that with Aaron Black. If they can bring back Luke Meadows and Shane Nelson, what a boost that is going to be. I still can't figure out why they dropped Shane Nelson to the reserves in round 3. But if they can bring him back, and Peel Thunder's brand of football not being a pretty sight, if I'm going to be honest, they're not playing a very high-scoring, spectacular brand of football. I don't know, West Perth might be in with a chance. They've beaten Peel Thunder before. You look at last year in Paul Santoni's first game as coach after Jason Salisic got sacked. And I think West Perth might have a bit of a case.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think this is a genuine sort of 50-50. Obviously, Peel being at home probably helps a little bit, but I wonder, these are two sides that aren't necessarily, West Perth have only scored more than 64 points once this season. Peel have only scored more than 67 points once this season. So they're not high-scoring teams, and I wonder who's going to be the one to kick the score. And it probably leans itself towards picking Keegan. I don't know, you can set the world on fire in the reserves, but you want your forward line going at full pace, and to do that you've got to have your stars in there. So from West Perth's perspective, I think that it's about getting the forward line mix right with the guys you bring in. And for Peel, I mean, they've lost 3 games, but none by more than 13 points.
That's true.
So they've been in every game,
including 2 1-point losses. So they haven't been beaten badly. Having said that, West Perth, they were in a close game against West Coast a couple of weeks ago until West Coast ran away with the match. Swan Districts as well, same thing happens. Swan Districts are able to run away with the match, but they can be competitive. And hence why this might be a bit of a surprise to you and to many. I'm sticking with West Perth. I feel this blind faith in the West Perth side that they can win a game, and I reckon they can do it against Peel Thunder. Okay, it's on a different ground, much smaller ground, but I reckon they've worked out Peel's brand of football is not that pretty, but they can play a more extravagant brand of football. Crazy tip, but I'm sticking with West Perth. Who are you going with?
I don't mind it. I'm going to stick with Peel, so we differ on this one, but I do think this could go either way, and it's going to be a fascinating matchup and a good way to kick off the round.
Certainly will be. 110 on 7+. And now, right here at Mineral Resources Park, can't wait to call this one. It's going to be a ripper. Dare I say it? Might be the game of the round. Who would have thought we'd say that involving the Eagles in 2026? East Perth and the Eagles at Mineral Resources Park live on 7+, 2:10 p.m. Who would have thought we'd be saying West Coast and East Perth, both sides in the 5 leading into this game? But I think the build-up has largely been about how good West Coast have been. Having said that, East Perth got back into gear on this ground last Saturday against Perth, only by 4 points. May not have been convincing, but you get the 4 points nonetheless. I feel this one could be a bit of a shootout.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We spoke about on last week's episode of Around the Waffle how Mineral Resources Park has been the highest scoring ground throughout the season so far. That was no different in the West Coast and Swans game. Plenty of points put up there. And yeah, you spoke about West Coast having all the momentum, and they could have up to 18 listed players playing this week. The reports are that Harry Edwards is going to return for West Coast. So you have 18 listed players plus your Callum Jamison, Archie Watt, Edwards, Baldwin, Burke, Datson. They're all reliable players. So I think this is going to be one of the strongest sides West Coast put up for a long time.
Does that performance last week put the likes of Hall, Gross, Dewar and also Matty Owies on the radar for an AFL call-up? Also Matty Flynn, who had over 40 hit-outs in the ruck against Swan Districts last week. Does that put them on the radar as well? Are they expected to be back in the AFL side for their game against Richmond?
It's extremely interesting to see. Like, you can guarantee that they'll have 18 listed players, but who they are, who knows? Because you're right, those guys put up such fantastic performances, and the West Coast obviously lost by over 100 points in the AFL. You would expect mass changes, so whether or not the side looks the same, that remains to be seen, and whether or not that consistency in having the same side is a factor in this one, because West Coast are yet to score less than 88 points this year. They are, their forward line is working really well. They lost Jack Williams last week, who goes up. People come up and down. It changes each week. So I wonder, they're getting plenty of goals from their midfield as well. But you mentioned, Paul, Gross, Hall and McRae are working really well inside. They're getting a lot of goals out of them. If they go up, can the guys that come down make the same impact?
Looking at the other side of the coin, East Perth, they're going to get their goals from a couple of options as well. They've got the likes of Tom North in there, who can kick a couple of goals, had 30 disposals last week. Brayshaw can get up and kick the odd goal here and there. Of course, he came back from a calf complaint that sidelined him for the first 3 weeks of the season. What East Perth really need to do is get off to a good start, because the Eagles, they burst out of the gates last Sunday at Mineral Resources Park, and East Perth, they're really going to have their back line on their A game, especially their tools, led by Harrison McCready. If he comes in and starts on that fullback, halfback, he's got to be on his A game because that Eagles forward line is very mobile, and not just through the AFL listed players, it's through their list in general that is very mobile, and East Perth are going to have to be on their game right from the opening bounce. If they concede a 7-goal start like Swans did last week, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So their midfield is going to have to be on their game, getting the ball out of the centre through Scott Jones, Brayshaw, North and company, and even maybe a couple of their small mids as well that can really have a good go at it, especially complementing the likes of the experienced players I just mentioned. So East Perth, they're going to have their work cut out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's, East Perth haven't necessarily set the world on fire, but we know how good their midfield can be. You mentioned the likes of Brayshaw, North. Those guys are fantastic players, and going against, if it's a Hall, a Gross and a Crate, that's going to be a fascinating battle in the midfield. One that I'm really interested to see, you mentioned the name Scott Jones. If Matt Flynn stays in the WAFL, Scott Jones and Matt Flynn are unbelievable ruckmen, probably two of the best in the comp. Those guys hit each other, an earthquake might strike. Yeah, this could be a fascinating ruck battle. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see, and I just wonder how much the home ground advantage comes into it as well. West Coast obviously love playing here and have played really well here this year, so it could go either way, but it's very interesting.
It's a tough game to pick like the Peel Thunder West Perth game based on what's at stake. 3rd versus 5th on the ladder. The Eagles looking for 4 wins in a row for the first time ever in their history in the WAFL. East Perth haven't really set the world on fire, as you said, and I will agree, but if they can string a couple of good wins together like Perth, West Coast coming up as well, and Peel Thunder in the next week, that'll certainly get them back in the right krill, and a couple of players coming back from injury as well. Jacob Mazzando, he'll play through the reserves in 2 weeks' time. Who does win this one? This is a tough one.
It's very tough. I'm going to stick with the momentum here. West Coast have had it. They've won obviously a couple in a row, and I'm sticking with them. I wonder how much talent is enough talent, and so far, 15 listed players on the weekend, that was enough to get over Swan Districts. They could have 17 or 18 this week, and then if they start with the guys that aren't AFL listed still having the impact that they are. We saw Caleb Datson here on the weekend kick the first 2 goals of the game, ended with 3. I just think those guys, and particularly their forward line, is working so well together. I think you spoke about the importance of East Perth's defence standing up. I just don't know if they'll be able to.
You've gone West Coast. I'm going the other way. I'm going to say East Perth. I reckon that win, as ugly as it was, really reinstilled the confidence that the players and Ross McQueen have on their objectives, and I reckon they can really snuff out the Eagles' momentum with a win at Mineral Resources Park, but not by much. I think it's going to be a very close contest like it was here last week. Can't wait to call that one on 7+.
Excited to hear you call that one.
It's going to be a good one. I've really got a good feeling about this one. And so has this one. I don't know. This one could be one of intrigue given where they are on the ladder. Claremont, undefeated with 4 wins out of 4. They take on Swan Districts, who are desperate to rebound after that 1-point loss to the Eagles. It's at Revo Fitness Stadium, live on Channel 7 from 2:10. Dare I say it, Claremont, they're looking the goods. They've got the best forward line in the competition. And Swan Districts, they're going to be in for one big test.
They sure are. I mean, they showed quite a bit on the weekend, Swan Districts, I felt. But this is another level, isn't it? Like Claremont right now are setting the world on fire. They feel like they are the team to beat, and Swans are such a young group at the moment, particularly forward of the ball. I asked the question on the broadcast with yourself where their goals are coming from. We sort of wondered. Provost, Reedy, McLaughlin now, they've kicked 4 each in a game. Petrich as well. So they haven't had anybody that's kicked more than 2 in a game yet. So outside of those big performances from your Reedys, your McLaughlins and Provost, who else is popping up to kick goals for Swan Districts?
The goal-kicking mids are going to be a bit of a concern for me for Swan Districts because there's not many there. They're just in and out midfielders, that get the ball into their attack. And you have the likes of Provost, who kicked 4 straight, 1 game early this season. Petrick, as you mentioned, William Reedy, who kicked 4 a couple of weeks ago, and Jackson McLaughlin, but they only came into the game in the second half. They were awfully quiet, and they're really going to have to find themselves as valuable options inside that forward 50 from go to wide. They're going to have to be a lot more mobile against the Claremont backline that is hard-nosed. Hardesty, Mountford are really going to be those enforcers down back. And Claremont's forward line are looking very much a potent combination. You've got the talls there in DeLacy and Gowdy, the small brigade that can complement them. Van Rooyen, Waterman, if he gets off at the tribunal during the week.
If he comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And also Zach Bain-Waring, who's evolved into a brilliant midfielder forward in the last 6 months. So Swan District's forwards, I don't know where their option's going to come from if they don't come into the game early. They need to get into the game early to try and catch Claremont off their guard, because Claremont is a hard tackling, hard running side, and it's proven in the results so far this year. Think about this, they're averaging 15 goals, 4 more than Swan Districts at the moment, and that's pretty alarming for a Swan Districts fan.
I completely agree, and I just wonder if Swan District's defence, Brandon Urso was pretty good on the weekend, but they have some youth down there as well in Caleb Ernst and guys like that, so that Claremont forward line is tough to stop. I mean, I have worries over their midfield as well, the midfield battle. They sort of went with, it was True, Cipro and Hinchcliffe on the weekend against West Coast, and they probably got found out a little bit. They found a lot of the footy, but how impactful were they? Were they winning clearances? They even had to throw Jesse Turner in there, which they don't often do. He likes to stick out on the wing, and of course he was kept quite quiet by Clay Hall, who put a bit of a tag on him, and those guys were going at it. Clay Hall was going at Jesse Turner all day, and I felt like there wasn't much help for him around. And Swans look their best when Jesse's so important to their transition game. They look their best when they're getting it into his hands, and on the weekend they struggled to do that because of the close attention he got. If he gets any attention again, are those inside midfielders going to help him at all in True, Hinchcliffe, Cipro? Those guys, are they going to step up and get Turner free, or are they going to let him get back?
And I have a feeling as well that the Swans midfielders, as you mentioned, could get some close attention from England Rogers and also Alvarez, who had 30 disposals last week. And with that being said, I think it's a no-brainer as far as our tips are concerned. I've gone Claremont, and I reckon by plenty.
Yeah, I think the same. I think this one's probably the easiest one on the ground to tip, and I just think, Claremont look seriously hard to beat. I mean, they're the second highest scoring team in the comp to West Coast. I think Eastland could run Impey off his feet here. Eastland's obviously been around for a long time. He's a star of the competition, and Rogers will lead the charge. I question whether Seb Bright is obviously in the side at the moment. He's tagging. He did a great job against Jamie Cripps on the weekend. Does he go to a Rogers? Does he have the strength to go with the Rogers if he's spending time forward? And it's a question that I think the answer is no, and I think Claremont get up convincing.
Well, we've both agreed on Claremont. That game is live on Channel 7 at 2:10. Now we go to the Good Grocer Park for our fourth game of round 5 on 7+. East Fremantle and Perth. Of course, Perth have got some pretty good memories about playing East Fremantle at the Good Grocer last September. They broke their finals hoodoo.
Good day, though.
Can they repeat the dose against an East Fremantle side who I'll say at this stage, I know it's early, but they're looking a bit lethargic?
They let themselves down on the weekend, didn't they?
They did.
I just wonder whether or not they can regroup against a side who, I still consider to be very strong in Perth. I think they've had a couple of soldiers out. I'm not sure how far away Brendan Parfitt is. I don't know if you've got any info on that.
He could play this week.
Could play this week, so that'll be a massive in for Perth as well. And I think they've worked pretty well without him in there. They're going to be even better with him in there. Only West Perth, who are sitting last, of course, and West Coast, who gave up 150 points in round 1, have given up more points than East Fremantle. They are giving up the third most points in the competition, and meanwhile, South Fremantle and Claremont are the only two sides who have been more restrictive than Perth. Right. So it kind of sets itself up in that regard. And I just think through the midfield, Constable, guys like Taylor and Burnett, if they've got Parfitt back through the midfield, is probably just going to be a little too strong unless the Sharks get massive contributions out of their sort of stalwarts in, Erdley, Baskerville, Joyce. Can they compete with those guys?
And also their forwards, they don't want to look too predictable. They can't always rely on their interstaters in Robinson and Smart. They're going to have to rely on some more options. And, East Fremantle haven't really been able to do that. It's always been Robinson and Smart that have found their goals. Erdley is more a defender midfielder. Baskerville, he can kick 1 or 2 goals at best, along with his 30 possessions as a midfielder forward. But they do need a third key forward to really balance that out, and at the moment they don't have one. Yeah,
correct. I wonder if Stranatica can spend a little bit more time forward. He hasn't really been able to cement himself as a great forward option in the past, but if he's got the height, I find that the battle between him and Josh Edwards might be quite fascinating.
Yeah, it certainly could be, and also Perth's backline, I reckon, could expose that hole that East Fremantle have got in their forward line. Dean has had a good season, easing the workload on Elijah Scoble, and also Matty Taylor, crafty off half back. I reckon they could outrun East Fremantle's forwards because they've gone with a tall setup in their forward line more often than not. Perth are a little bit more mobile in that defensive 50, and they could outrun East Fremantle all throughout the afternoon. I've just got this feeling that Perth might run all over them, especially through their back line and their star-studded midfield. And if they get Brendan Parfitt back, that could be massive. Blake Schlensog, he could be in maybe as well. Lockie Payton is still a few weeks away. So, the full strength aspect of Perth's side is starting to come back. So that could be a real difference come the end of the game, and I reckon the memories of the elimination final could inspire them a little bit more. And with that being said, I'll go Perth in this one by about 5 goals. I feel East Fremantle, that 111-point loss to Claremont has set them back big time.
Yeah, I concur. I'm going Perth as well, and I echo all the points you made. I think guys like Riley Wills can go to another level. They just feel like they're going, and that there's another level that Perth are capable of. And I still have them as a contender this year, and I think this is an opportunity for them to go out against a side that was pretty handedly beaten last week and show that, maybe even get a percentage boost along the way.
It could be interesting. Big call from you, percentage booster. It could be an interesting clash at the Good Grocer Park on Saturday. One more game to conclude round 5. It's a day-nighter at Sullivan Logistics Stadium, a 4:10 start, live on 7+. It's Subiaco against South Fremantle. And I reckon we don't often put the onus on one player from each side, but this game could evolve into the case of Clark and Parker. If they both are missing from that game, we don't know whether Parker's going to play as of yet, because he was a late withdrawal for the game against Claremont last week, the week before last, did not play against West Perth. If he comes back in, that's a boost for South Fremantle. And of course, with Greg Clark being suspended, who is going to be that leading on-baller in that side? Could be the likes of Liam Hickmott, maybe Fraser Rickson in the ruck. And for East Fremantle, they've still got a little bit there in Bletchington and also Winder and Florenka. Those are good, strong midfield setup, but they don't have the flair and energy as the likes of Matty Parker. So could be a real tough one for both sides. It may be tighter than others may think.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's going to be fairly interesting to see how much the home ground advantage plays into Subi's hands. But I struggle to get there with Subi. Not because of them, they're obviously a young side coming through, but because of how highly rated South Freo are. Their backline is, it's fascinating to me. Both clubs average 12 goals a game, right? The same amount. They're separated by 2 points in the total points for this year. So scoring-wise, very similar. South Fremantle's percentage is 60% better than Subiaco's, and that's due to the restriction. Their backline, full of stars in Strom, Pearce and Hughes, is fantastic.
You talk about restrictive. Subiaco, they're a very restrictive side as well, especially the pressure they apply on the on-ball carrier. 94 tackles they made against Peel last week. I reckon that could be the key aspect to Subiaco winning this game. Not saying if they will or not, but it could be a key difference, because the close pressure they applied on the on-ball carrier was brilliant against Peel Thunder in that 1-point win. And I reckon that's what Jared Schofield has told them to really be, a more gritty, more pressure-orientated side. And okay, it's worked in some games, it hasn't worked in others, but I reckon this was the best showing that it could work under Jared Schofield with those 94 tackles. And if you go anywhere in that territory as far as tackles are concerned, more often than not, it does win you a game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important, under lights at night at Sullivan Logistics. It's a ground and a time of day where, it's important to be gritty and your grunt work is really vital. And, it's going to be important for them to restrict the guys like Rusco and Donaldson. They're scoring, South Freo pride themselves on their defence. So if you let their forward and attack go, it spells disaster. So you've got to stop one of them. And, it's pretty hard to stop their defence right now. So stopping their scoring is going to be important for Subiaco.
What could be the difference in favour of South Fremantle, though, is obviously their three-pronged midfield setup, but also their small forwards. Obviously Donaldson came back, was a bit quiet, but, he got into the game pretty late. But also you've got some good complementary options there as well to help Donaldson if he gets held down by a strong Subiaco backline.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think he gets better this week. I think they are getting better this week. They've probably not let themselves down, but they haven't been quite at the level they were last year. Obviously, it's very hard to replicate how good South Freo were last year, but I see them winning this game, and I see them winning it fairly comfortably, despite Subi, being better than I expected, and really, on paper, being matched up quite well.
So you've gone South Fremantle in this one?
I have.
I've gone Subiaco. I reckon it's going to be very close. I think because of the pressure factor that is brought in by the line, especially with their tackling, I reckon they can take South Fremantle's run off their game.
Play really well at Sullivan Logistics as well. They love
do.
that ground, and it'll be interesting to see if that factors in.
Be a cracking round of footy. We can't wait.
Sure.
All games are live, free, and in full on 7+. I reckon this week could be even closer than last weekend. We had 2 1-point results. We could have some more.
We could well do. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, and I'm excited to watch.
It's going to be sensational. Round 5 coming your way. All games on Saturday. We'll take a quick break here on Around the Waffle. We're taking the show on the road this week at Mineral Resources Park, the home of the Demons and the West Coast Eagles. I'm alongside Denham Melrose. It's on the Around the Waffle YouTube channel and on your podcast service. All thanks to our fine supporters: Grants Car Stereo Morning, Sullivan Logistics, District Promotions, and Front Row Screens. We'll take a break, and when we do come back, we'll play an interview I conducted with Anjelique Raison from East Fremantle ahead of their Friday night game against Perth, and we'll preview round 6 of the ACCO WAFLW season. Back with more after this.
Hey Siri, how to connect Bluetooth to Mac truck?
Sullivan 2, what's your position?
Just a midfielder, mate. On your left. Oh, come on, get out of the way.
Car Stereo Morley, proudly supplying and fitting quality car stereos for over 15 years, selling top name brands like Alpine, Focal, Rockford Fosgate. From a simple upgrade to complete custom systems, stop in and see Grant and the boys at 61 Russell Street, Morley, or visit us online at carstereo.com.au.
And you're back with us here on Around the Waffle. Paul Persick and Denham Melrose with you for your Thursday night. And in case you're wondering, no, we are not in our usual confines at the Hen House Studios in Osborne Park. We're taking the show on the road in 2026 in selected episodes. And our first stop, of course, is at Mineral Resources Park, home of the Perth Demons. And, of course, the West Coast Eagles, who are on a high with 3 wins in a row. We've built up to their big game against East Perth and all of the round 5 waffle action. Denham Melrose is with me, and Denham, not just the waffle has been very exciting, but WAFL W as well. We've seen some high-scoring games all throughout the season so far, and the standard of WAFL W footy is just getting better all the time.
It certainly is, yeah. It felt like a bit of a turning point almost last year. It was one of the best ends to a season at any level I've ever seen, and it's translated into this year as well, so it's still going strong, and it's great to see, and talent everywhere, really, isn't there?
Absolutely, it is stacked here in Western Australia. Now, we're going to preview all the round 6 action in just a moment, but first off, I had a quick chat with Anjelique Raison from the East Fremantle Football Club. Of course, they're off the bye. They're 2 wins and 2 losses so far this season. Angelique, of course, back at the club in 2025, and it's her second year back at the Sharks. And I've spoken with her on how the team has been performing so far this season and what they can do on Friday night against the Demons at the Good Grocer Park. Here it is.
Okay, East Fremantle are fresh off the bye in the WAFL W, and they've got a big Friday night game against Perth to try and solidify themselves in the top 4 as we approach the first quarter of the season. And East Fremantle, a noticeably new look side in the competition, having lost a lot of experience. They're under a first-year coach. But of course, one key player has remained with the Sharks in her second year and came back last week in a big, big way. Joining me is Anjelique Raison. She is my special guest today on Around the Waffle. Hello, Anjelique. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well. Great to have you on the show. Let's go back to that win over East Perth a fortnight ago. Must have felt pretty good to come back into the side. Obviously, East Fremantle have had an indifferent start to the season. How did you feel about the team's performance in round 4?
Yeah, I thought we were really good. I think we're slowly kind of putting bits and pieces together. We've had a rougher start than we wanted to, but as you said, we're quite a young team. So round 4 was kind of the first kind of glimpses of what we can be, and I think that kind of gave us a bit more confidence going into the rest of the season.
David Eames, in his first year as East Fremantle coach, how have you taken to his game plan and his vision for East Fremantle to remain a finals contender in 2026?
Yeah, I think it's good. It's challenging the girls a bit more, and I think it's kind of putting more emphasis on the girls' skills, which is something that hasn't been a focus in the last few years that I've been at the club. So, yeah, kind of knowing what the girls can do and pushing them to do that, it's been really, really good.
The standard of the competition keeps getting better, and that applies to all the clubs. What have you seen that has really taken you by surprise in the WAFL W competition? Because now not only the standard is getting better, but there's a lot more eyeballs on it.
Yeah, I think this is the difference of the girls being able to make decisions and be more composed. I think in the first few years it was kind of just give it off as quick as you can, but now the girls are trying challenging and see what they can do, take a few more bounces, take a few more runs, just do all the exciting things that you kind of seen in the men's game for so long now. The girls are kind of starting to get a bit more of an understanding of how much time they really do have when they have it. Just making better decisions, making the game look a bit better.
East Fremantle have been a specialist in recent times of the Friday night game down at Good Grocer Park. What is it about playing at night that really stands out compared to playing, the standard daytime slot on a Saturday or a Sunday?
I mean, personally, you get less sunburn, which is always nice. But the Friday night is the same night we would usually have training. I think it's just kind of getting you in the mindset of we already kind of do this set of times, especially at East Ferro. With there not being a huge stadium protecting you from the wind, I think it's a bit of a home advantage to kind of know what it's like to play at that oval.
Would you think the next 4 games are going to be essential? Because obviously you've got 2 more before the women's state game bye, and then you've got 2 more after that, 3 of those being on a Friday night. Do you think this stretch is going to be a critical time of the season after starting out at 2-2?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is kind of make or break these next few games, see what we actually can hold ourselves accountable for. Regardless of if we win or lose, I think holding us to the standard of what kind of we want to look like going forward as well. And yeah, super important.
Well, what are your thoughts on a couple of your teammates being selected in the state squad? Captain Tiani Teakle, Jay Flynn, Noah McNaughton and Mackenzie Webb. Big opportunity for them to play for West Australia.
Yeah, I think they've all done it before, so I think they'll kill it down there, and most of them are in the back line apart from Noah, so it should be a strong back line. I wish South Australia the best playing on those guys.
We'd love to see WA get the job done against South Australia. Now, a couple of games ago, obviously against East Perth, obviously you kicked 8 goals for. You've averaged about 7 or 8 goals as a team since that opening round loss to South Fremantle, and you've responded in a big way, especially with the way you played in that round 1 game and how you've improved as a team. What did you look at after that round 1 loss that has still stuck with you and the team in the round since?
I think, like I said before, the game getting better, it's just how to play composed. I think the first round was we had, I think, a lot of debut girls, and I think they're just slowly figuring out what the difference, the jump is between with the Rogers girls and up to seniors. They're figuring out that they actually don't have as much time as they think they do. So I think that is the biggest jump of the girls kind of taking on a bit more and seeing what they can do against bigger bodies, and yeah, it's been really exciting. You've
beaten Perth both times in your first 2 meetings with them in their second season of competition. What do you see in the Perth side that could make it a real competitive contest on Friday night?
Yeah, they've obviously done a bit of recruiting over in the off-season, so they're a lot different to last year, but we've managed to steal a couple of those of their players. So I think, yeah, it could go anyone's way, but I'm hoping it goes our way on Friday. It's
going to be a great game on Friday night over at Good Grocer Park. Angelique, all the very best, and to the East Fremantle team, we really appreciate your time here on Around the Waffle. Go get them on Friday.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And there is Anjelique Raison there chatting earlier today from the East Fremantle Football Club. And we're going to go to that game right now, Denham. East Fremantle up against Perth on Friday night, and all games in the WAFL W are live on the WAFL YouTube channel. Now, of course, both these sides met twice last year. East Fremantle won both of them. And what is going to be important for me is how Perth can really convert on their chances. That's what struck me so far this season. Perth, they're able to contend against top sides, but it's their inability to convert off simple chances that has hurt them.
It's probably the same issue that Appeal have had in the men's comp as well. So, yeah, I wonder if they can fix that this week. It's definitely a game that Perth can win. They've obviously shown that they can compete a bit better and a bit stronger this year. They had their wins last year as well. So I think that being at home will probably help. But I think that the Sharks have bounced back from that round 1 belting to South Freo, and I feel that this is more of a genuine 50-50 now.
Yeah, it could be, especially with you're up against a Perth side that are starting to get better, apart from the obvious conversions in front of goal. But they're getting better. They're playing some really good gritty football, but they're up against an East Fremantle side that, although they're a more younger side, they've still got a lot of experience, obviously, with Anjelique Raison, who I spoke with earlier, McNaughton, Amber Kinane, and also a couple of others, Eve Wilson-Sieber, in the forward line. So that could be a point of conjecture as to how they can combat the firepower of the forward line of East Fremantle.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think it's tough to quell all of them. They've got, you mentioned a lot of stars there, and they've also got Webb and Flynn and Sarah Wilstra. They've got a lot of experience there as well. So I think that's what the Sharks will lean on. For Perth, whether they put some attention into some of those girls, whether Noah McNaughton gets some attention as well. She's obviously an up-and-coming star. So it'll be interesting to see who Perth targets. But I think should they get the mix right, they're every chance.
They could be, but with Perth, with the likes of Shannon and Warren leading that on-ball division, it could be a bit of a challenge. But Perth are every bit as a chance has East Fremantle to take victory in this game, especially through the hard work of Molly Warren in the ruck and Isabella Shannon in midfield. With that said, I still think East Fremantle will get up. I think it's a venue game. This one, at the Good Grocer Park, East Fremantle love playing on a Friday night there, and I reckon East Fremantle will get the better of Perth, maybe by about 1 or 2 goals at least, especially with their firepower they have through midfield and the way they can play the ground on a Friday night. They love playing there, and I reckon it could be a good win for them in the end.
Yeah, we've both gone East Freo here. I think this, Perth, it's great to see them up and coming, and they are winning some more games, but I think this is one where, like I said, East Fremantle will just have a bit more experience and they'll lean on that. And I see them getting this one, but like you say, Friday night footy, it can go either way.
Absolutely. Let's go now to the next game. It's at 11:05 in the morning on Saturday, live on the WAFL YouTube channel. It's West Perth travelling to Mandurah, the long trip south, to take on the winless Peel Thunder. And West Perth, they're on a bit of a high after their 8-point win last week against South Fremantle. They've got a couple of players coming back into the side. Kat Bennett is slated to be one of them after being dropped last week. But I reckon Peel Thunder, with the desperation they've shown, especially with Chloe Wrigley back in the side from suspension, they might be a chance, but it could be a difference in class between Peel Thunder and West Perth. I'd fallen in favour of West Perth when you're looking at their depth in midfield. It looks better on paper, but you never know in this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I think West Perth probably a bit better forward of the ball as well. But like you say, Peel Thunder, they've got ball winners in there. Chloe Wrigley's obviously been a star ball winner for a long time, and I feel like they just need to use it a little bit better. West Perth obviously have the experience, and Peel winless to this point. Whether that starts to add up, it's tough not winning to this point in the season, and I'd hate to see it fall away even more than it has. So this is a game that I'd love to see Peel get up for, and obviously being at home is an advantage in itself as well. But West Perth, I just feel might have the experience factor.
It could be, especially through their midfield and in their forwards. Jess Roper has been sensational over there at West Perth. The Vanden Heavers tearing it up inside forward 50, and I reckon that could make Peel's morning a bit of a long one, especially with how much firepower West Perth have got in that forward line, and not just their goal-kicking forwards, but they've got a couple of good mids who can shift up the ground and apply some more scoreboard pressure for West Perth in the end.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you spoke about the young up-and-coming talent of West Perth earlier in girls like Lexi Strawn and Karen Zigalewski. I think they've got this talent bursting out everywhere. Obviously, Mia Russo last year, so they just keep bringing these girls through, and they keep coming up from their Rogers side, and I just think they're in a really good position at the moment, West Perth.
They are, but when you're looking at likes of Peel Thunder's forward line, they're not without their depth as well. Of course, they've got a couple of really good players, Bartlett in there as well. She kicked a couple of goals in that game last week. But also, who are they going to turn to for support if she gets held down by the West Perth backline? I reckon it's going to be all down to class and composure from Peel Thunder, because if West Perth get those repeated entries inside their forward 50, who do Peel turn to in the backline to try and contain West Perth in this game?
Yeah, exactly right. I think that's what it's going to come down to, and Peel, not that they're just not up to it at the moment, but they're a younger side, and they challenged Subi last week. I thought they were quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it'll be handy to just see them compete like that.
Newsom was quite handy as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I don't think it's going to be a belting by any means. I would love to see Peel compete, and I think they will at home. They'll put on for their fans, and it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, it will be closer than some may think, but with that in mind, who does win?
I've gone West Perth. Like I said, I'll lean on their experience, and I think they've just got more talent overall. But home ground advantage, it's never an easy task going down to Mandurah, so no. it'll be that factor is in Peel's favour, and I just think Peel they need the win. Can they get it? I don't think so.
Yeah, West Perth for me, I reckon, especially through their experienced stars, will get the job done in the end. Now we go to Sunday, and it's a double header at Sullivan Logistics Stadium. Not an uncommon practice in the WAFL W. Hopefully a big crowd will turn out on the Sunday. First off, it is Subiaco and South Fremantle. Of course, Subiaco offer a very good win against Peel Thunder by 8 points at home, and of course South Fremantle offer a similar margin, this time on the losing end to West Perth last weekend as well. Subiaco, they want to stake their claims a top 2 team. Having said that, they haven't really been a top gear. They've let sides back into the game. They haven't been that aggressive firebrand side that we saw last year. That got them to the preliminary final. A win by a huge margin against the South Fremantle side, who have been desperate but haven't been able to put the final piece of the puzzle together, will certainly be important.
They're very important, but I think you're right. They're just not quite on as much as they were last year. They're just sort of going at the moment, Subi. And though I think they're probably the stronger team on paper, I think this is a game that South Freo would go into thinking we can absolutely challenge them, and we've seen teams do that in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, like we just spoke about, Peel were right there with them, and South Freo, I think, are pretty, universally considered a stronger side than Peel. So I think this one's fairly in the balance. South Freo have lost a few soldiers. Obviously, Abby Grant goes out of the side, but and they haven't won since round one when they did belt East Freo, but Subi certainly didn't look like world beaters last week by any means.
No, they certainly did not. And my concern has been since the start of the season, they haven't been able to find that number one tall key forward to replace Olivia Wolmerans, who's obviously gone into the AFLW system. But, they've tried obviously a few goal-kicking mids, Petrevski, Tess Lyons, Quinn Schofield has been up there, but she hasn't made the impact that has been desired. And I think they're still going to be in a bit of trouble. Having said that, their midfield and their back line make up for it, and especially through their pace and their hard tackling. I reckon that could go a long way into winning this game against a South Fremantle side who've got some depth themselves. Obviously, Ash Gomes leading the charge with 18 disposals in that game last week, and that loss to West Perth, but they need more than just Gomes getting the ball out of the centre. They need to have a three-pronged midfield setup to try and win those clearances against Subiaco's side that dominate them 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like they're missing what Renee Morgan was able to do for them last year through that midfield.
And Zoe Huggin in the forward line.
Correct, yeah, exactly right. So, it's not that Ashley Gomes isn't superb, it's just whether she can do it on her own at the moment. She needs a couple to come with her. And, I echo the point you made about, Subi's midfield and defence being quite strong at the moment, and the forward line probably is the difference between them last year and this year, and where they've sort of fallen a little bit. And, I'm really quite high on Layla Quinn Schofield, but I think she does her best work at the feet of a key forward like Olivia Wolmerans, like you mentioned, and without that, that's probably why she's not quite having the impact that she might have had last year. And I wonder if that comes at any point or whether it remains the way it is.
If South Fremantle win this game, does that put them into top 4 contention? Because they've been talked about as a top 4 team, but they just haven't been able to execute. And of course, with newer rivals, Ash Gomes in particular, that certainly bolstered their side on paper. If they beat Subiaco, that could put them in top 4 conversations.
It certainly could, yeah. This is the one that they'll sort of have, circled in the calendar and going, this sets us up throughout the rest of the year to really challenge. And it was funny, they started the year just about as good as anybody did last year, and then fell away as the season continued. And this season it's almost been a little bit flipped, and I wonder if it's them working into the season and coming up as it goes.
But having said that, Subiaco, they just got too much class despite, not having that tall key forward presence, and that's why I've gone with Subiaco to win this one, but not by much. I'd love to see South Fremantle make a good challenge in what could be a very good game over there at Sullivan Logistics Stadium. Who have you gone for?
I would too, but I've also gone for Subiaco. I think the same reasons. It seems clear at this point that Subi, Claremont and Swan Districts are going to be the strongest 3 sides as they were last year, and those Subi aren't quite going at the rate of those 2 sides all the way they did last year. This feels like a game that, you mentioned South Freo would have this circled on the calendar because they feel like it could project them for the rest of the year. I think the same of Subi. They would have this one circled and go, right, we win this one, we win it comfortably, and then we set ourselves up going forward for the rest of the year.
It's all about that long-term stretch, isn't it? Especially as we head towards the state game bye, no doubt about that. They want to bank up wins to really set themselves up after the state game bye in mid-May. That game starts at 12:10 on the WAFL YouTube channel, by the way. And then the second game of the doubleheader to conclude the round at 2:15, live on the WAFL YouTube channel, East Perth and Swan Districts. Now, East Perth have not won since round 1. Swan Districts looking for 6 wins out of 6. How good are those Swans?
They are unbelievable, aren't they? They've got stars across the board, and they're scoring well. They've got great forward line prowess, and it's hard to see anything stopping them at this point, isn't it?
Well, especially when they've got the second youngest list in the competition. And, you say they've got stars, but, when you're looking at the average age of the side, it's not much, isn't it? When you're looking at it, second youngest side in the competition, and they've got 5 wins out of 5. To me, that took me by surprise. But what didn't take me by surprise is the way they went about it. They banked those wins early, and the way they played against Claremont in round 1 was brilliant. They just kept on getting into top gear every game, and they did so against Perth, making the most of their failed chances in front of goal. Of course, they'll still have Quaither out through suspensions. Hamson Barros held her own in the ruck as well. Bella Edgley went out a couple of weeks ago with a shoulder injury. That's set Swan Districts back a key defender, but since then, not much has gone wrong for Swan Districts, and I reckon with their experience and their run and carry through midfield is going to be a real key, especially led by Jamie Henry, but she has got great support in the midfield unit. Naomi Baker has also been leading that charge, getting plenty of possessions and providing that additional pace through the corridor, and I reckon that's where Swan Districts could go all the way in this one, especially when you've got firepower in midfield and up forward too. We must not forget that through Fitzgerald and Maguire. They've just got depth everywhere around the ground. While Claremont have been touted they've got the best list in the competition, they've still got some missing spots. Swan Districts, at the moment, they're the complete package. And I reckon against the young East Perth side who are still developing into a competitive unit, I reckon they're going to feel the full force of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I echo everything you said. I think Swan District, it's easy to get down on yourself as a club after a loss in a grand final like they had last year, and it would be easy to fall away a little bit and feel sorry for yourselves. I think it's pretty obvious. They've gone the other way, haven't they? They are as vengeant a team as I've ever seen. They are out for blood, and I think their mind, they want to go all the way through the season undefeated and on grand final day holding up that cup as well. So they feel like the strongest team in the comp to me. East Perth, of course, still quite young, as you said, but have some stars in their own right. Lucy Greenwood's a fantastic player and a star in my eyes. So I don't think that they're necessarily outmatched here on paper, but like you said, it's the way Swan Districts go about it, and I just think, Henry, Baker, Taylor Edwards up forward, they've just got such good names.
Yeah, East Perth are more of a possession-based side, aren't they? But they're a side that are learning more about themselves, as a football unit. Young side still developing into a composed side in the WAFLW competition. And Lucy Greenwood is up there, Liz McGrath as well. I rate her very highly as a good developing player in the East Perth side. But they're still growing in class, I think, and they haven't got there yet. Swan Districts, they're already right up there when you're looking at how much class they've got as a unit. And around the ground, Swans play each end of the ground so well, and they could use the open spaces of the wings at Sullivan Logistics Stadium to great effect. It is a big ground, and I reckon their midfielders and their defenders are going to create a lot.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'll tell you a funny story about Naomi Baker. So I work with her at the footy club here, of course, and last week they played here. She was here from 8 a.m. right throughout the workday until they didn't finish that game until about 11 p.m. She was here the entire day. It'll let her stop her. She's a star now, Baker. She's a very, very good player.
Dedication right there.
Absolutely, it is dedication. I agree. I get the feeling that this is a game that Swan Districts could be looking. I mentioned it earlier. A bit of a percentage boost, and also I think Taylor Edwards will be eyeing this one as a chance to maybe kick ourselves ahead in the lead in goal kicking.
With that in mind, I can imagine you've gone with Swan Districts to win this one.
I certainly have. I just think as much as Sullivan Logistics Stadium and East Perth being a young up and coming side is all great, but Swan Districts just look like absolute world beaters. I don't see anyone beating them, let alone East Perth.
Okay, big call, but I've gone with Swan Districts as well to win that one on Sunday in the second leg of the doubleheader. You can see all the WAFLW action on the WAFL YouTube channel on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be a great round of WAFLW football. We're coming to you from Mineral Resources Park. We're taking Around the WAFL on the road in selected episodes in 2026. When we come back, Around the WAFL on location is back. Talk about taking the show on the road in more ways than one. Ask us anything, some of your questions heading into the weekend of WAFL footy, and then of course we'll wrap things up in our preview show here on Around the WAFL. Thanks to Sullivan Logistics, Front Row Screens, District Promotions, and also Grant's Car Stereo. Morley will be back right after this.
Hey Siri, how to connect Bluetooth to Mac truck?
Sullivan 2, what's your position?
Just a midfielder, mate. On your left. Oh, come on, get out of the way.
Car Stereo Morley, proudly supplying and fitting quality car stereos for over 15 years, selling top name brands like Alpine, Focal, Rockford Fosgate, From a simple upgrade to complete custom systems, stop in and see Grant and the boys at 61 Russell Street, Morley, or visit us online at carstereo.com.au.
And back with us here on Around the Waffle. We're hitting the road this week in our preview episode. We're coming to you from Mineral Resources Park, as you can see, floodlit. And you see the Perth girls there in training as well. They're gearing up for a big game on Friday night against East Fremantle. But on location this week, we're heading out to Leederville. It's back after a week off. And we went to East Perth, and Anzac Round was, all about the theme of leadership, the way I saw it this weekend. And it was exhibited in no better way than by Hamish Brayshaw. Now, of course, he returned after missing the first 3 weeks with a calf problem that ruled him out for those first 3 weeks of the season. But when he came back, he led his side from the front in the best possible way. Here is Around the Waffle on location with Hamish Brayshaw.
This past weekend, Anzac Day showcased the universal theme of leadership.
They pile in. Siren!
Oh my goodness.
What a win for the East Perth Footy Club.
And East Perth welcomed back a number one leader. After being out of action for such a long time, he played that game with something to prove.
It was niggling me a little bit, so the first couple on the sideline, and they're always harder when they're close losses. But no, it felt great. I got through, was on managed minutes, I think I played just under 75 and got through unscathed, and we came away with 4 points, so it was a pretty good return. I was happy with it.
Calf troubles forced Hamish Brayshaw to miss the first 3 rounds of the season, but it doesn't stop him from showing the leadership that has gotten him to 2 grand finals.
Over the last couple of years have gotten there and just fallen short, so trying to put yourself in that situation. I know it's nothing like a grand final, but to play in the bigger games, you try and work yourself up so that when you come back and hopefully get another chance at those sort of things, the back end becomes a little bit more familiar.
His return on Saturday in the 4-point win over Perth revitalised his and East Perth's season, amassing 27 touches and 7 tackles, showing he never lost his tough spark that makes him one of the best in the competition. And he had some great Anzac inspiration before the game.
The club did it really well. We had a veteran, an old East Perth player, come in and give us the rundown of what it used to be like, and a couple of war stories, and got us up and about. But yeah, we sort of we build into that team, lean into the teamwork, the team culture, which is all in the Anzac spirit, and we try to sort of play off that, albeit it's not a war. We did everything we could to sort of lean into that teamsmanship.
And Hammer is no stranger to playing under pressure. In fact, he thrives on that challenge. As one of East Perth's co-captains, his role is not just to get his side to play beyond their best when the chips are down, but to also mentor the young guns coming through at East Perth in their efforts to get to the next level.
When I first moved over here, obviously playing at West Coast, I had guys like Luke Shuey and Elliot Yeo, and as a young fella, you're a bit shy and nervous to go up, but when they give you your time, it was the greatest thing for me to learn, and I try my best. Obviously, I'm no player like them, but to give my time to the young guys here, that was young Fletcher Brown I was working with before, and to give your time to them and help them with the tricks that you've got, it's pretty fun to see them put it into play on the weekend, and that's, I think, one of the benefits and the strengths of our team is we've got such good depth. So if us senior guys can sort of impart some knowledge on the younger boys, then it puts pressure on spots, puts pressure on selection, and everyone's better for it.
And for the man they call Hammer, his leadership qualities and the energy that he brings rubs off well on the rest of the team, and it inspired his side in that win over Perth last Saturday. And they'll need his inspiration again because they face another big test, the third-placed unpredictable West Coast Eagles at Mineral Resources Park on Saturday. At Sullivan Logistics Stadium, Paul Persick on location for Around the Waffle.
He is a leader in many ways, the great Hammer himself, not just a great star in the media, but also he lets his footy do the talking when he's on the field, and it was great to see him back out there on the field against Perth on Saturday. And his perspective as a leader of the side is absolutely brilliant, not just inspiring the experienced players to play beyond their best when the chips are down, but about his mentoring of the younger kids that are coming up through the ranks playing in the league side. I saw him practicing a bit of one-on-one with a couple of his teammates after the main session was done. It shows how much pride he's got.
Absolutely, and as he should. I think East Perth have been so close for a long time now, and he's been a massive part of that, and he probably provides the one thing they miss in that in and under nuggety midfielder who is happy to put his body on the line and win the footy out to a North and to a Cooper Stevens and those guys. I think he is exactly what they've missed over the first couple of weeks, and it'll be fascinating to see going forward from last week how much of an impact he has.
Let's go to Ask Us Anything, some of your questions on socials leading into the weekend of football. Thanks so much, by the way, for all of them. We can't get to too many of them because time is of the essence. Lauren from Instagram has said, hey guys, which forward line do you think is the best in the WAFL right now and why? Well, I think it's safe to say Claremont. Claremont, just look at their depth. You know, Gowdy, DeLacy, Treacy, been all absolutely exceptional when you're looking at their performance so far. And also the small brigade, Van Rooyen, Alec Waterman, Bailey Rogers can bob up as a goal-kicking forward. And when you look at their options up forward, they've fired on all cylinders all throughout the season so far. To answer your question, Lauren, that's my answer. Only Denham will have his. Claremont for me.
Yeah, I think what the thing is for Claremont is you obviously mentioned all the stars there, and of course like DeLacy goes and kicks 4, and I think it comes from their depth. Their reserve side is as stacked as any in the competition, and they have goal kickers there. We mentioned Rory Luscombe kicking 6 goals 5 is mental, but you know, Tom Cossum pops up and kicks 2 as well. They've got guys in that forward line at reserves level that can step into that league side and do it in a heartbeat as well. But I'm actually going to go with West Coast because I feel like they've been, you know, they're obviously second in the comp for scoring, and right now it just seems like that's the part of their game that's completely on fire, and it doesn't even matter who they've got in there. The system seems to be working really well. Jack Williams, of course, was the star early. He goes up into the AFL side. They have more come down, and I think that they're just firing on all cylinders there. Caleb Datson gets thrown forward and kicks 3. Josh Burke can do it at either end of the ground. They even tried Callum Jamison down there on the weekend.
Yeah.
I just feel that it's working really well, and they're probably the challengers to Claremont. They're probably the 2 strongest sides forward of the ball at the moment, and it'll be fascinating to see them match up.
You make a good case there with West Coast, especially on their flexibility as to which forwards they select for those respective games. You know, who knows who's going to come into that game against East Perth, but you know, especially with the fact that they're ranked so high in scoring, you know, second place as you mentioned, it's a good case you do present. Lauren, thank you so much for your question, really appreciate it. Barry via our Instagram has said, I'm a Perth supporter and I reckon we can still go on a good run despite the loss last week to East Perth. We really challenged them only for inaccuracy in front of goal to bite us. Do you think Perth can still finish top 3 this year? I think yes. I think they've got the cattle to really get it done. Okay, some are out through injury at the moment. They will come back and really make the Perth side full strength again. And, you know, looking to build on their successful finals campaign last year, I still think they're top 3 material. It's still pretty early, but they're top 3 material, I think.
Yeah, I agree, Barry. I've been really strong on this. I feel that they're still an absolute contender, and I think that, you know, when guys go out through injury and whatnot, it can be easy to get muddled up a bit, and I feel like they still remain consistent. Obviously, lost on the weekend, but they're still in these games against teams that are still quite strong, and I think once they get all their soldiers back, they're absolutely every bit as good as they were last year, if not better.
Yeah, they could be. Who knows what's going to happen later down the track. Thank you, Barry, for your question. Andrew on our Facebook page, thank you, Andrew. How good are those Swans in the WAFL W? They may have a young side, but do you think they have the perfect team balance at both ends of the ground? Which I feel is the reason why they've remained unbeaten so far. That is a good point, Andrew. Really do appreciate it, and I do agree. They've got a very balanced side. Okay, they've got the second youngest list on the side, but team balance is the best at the moment in the WAFL W competition, and the results are just proof in the pudding.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, Paul, about how strong their defensive line is, and we mentioned the midfield stars in Henry and Naomi Baker, and forward of the ball, Taylor Edwards has been a star for a long time, so, you know, and Maguire, like, they've got players across the ground that compete in every line. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think they're the strongest side almost in every line, and you put it all together and they're just dominant, aren't they?
The complete package, are they? Swan Districts, 5 wins out of 5. Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Finally, Darren from Instagram has said, hey boys, I reckon the Eagles are a chance against East Perth on Saturday. Having said that, both sides haven't been stringing together 4 quarters of footy consistently. Is that going to be the big key for both sides? Yes, that will be. That's something that we omitted during our preview of the game. But Darren, thanks so much for bringing it up. Who's going to string 4 quarters of football together? That remains to be seen. We've seen, you know, West Coast get off to, you know, generally poor starts during the early stages of the season, and then they went up to a good start against Swan Districts last weekend, but they really didn't string 4 quarters together. They let the Swans back into the game. Having said that, against an East Perth side that is going to have a couple of players come back, they're going to be a stronger side, they need to string 4 quarters together this week.
It's a fascinating point because I think it's probably been the problem over the last couple of years. West Coast have been able to show massively strong quarters that not put the 4 together at once. And like you mentioned, first couple of games, even the West Perth win, they were comeback wins. They didn't start with it all. And then, of course, our game that we called on the weekend, Paul, they started like a house on fire, but then the second half they let Swan Districts right back into the game, and it's not until very late in the game that they even get back in front. So yeah, it's about putting 4 quarters together, and obviously, to answer Darren's question, I've picked West Coast. I do think they're a chance, but we spoke about already how tight it's going to be. We feel that this could go either way.
It could do. Thank you very much, Darren, and thank you all to for our Facebook and Instagram followers to your questions. We really do appreciate it. We're actually closing in on 1,000 Instagram followers, so fans, get us to that 1,000 mark. We really do appreciate it. That wraps things up for what has been a fantastic trip hitting the road to Mineral Resources Park, and of course we'll keep on going in selected episodes in 2026. Big thanks to Perth and the West Coast Eagles for allowing us to record here this week. We really do appreciate it. And Darren, Denham, thank you so much for stepping in. We really do appreciate it. You're a key component of Around the Waffle. We really do appreciate your input, and we look forward to more from you across the season.
Not a problem at all, Paul. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and go well this weekend, everyone. It's going to be an exciting game of waffle footy.
Enjoy the weekend of footy, Denham, and to our fans as well, enjoy the weekend. It's going to be a big weekend of waffle football and WAFLW football as well. That is going to be coming your way starting on Friday night at the Good Grocer Park. Check out all our social content. You can check out Facebook and Instagram, and you can also check out our episodes on the Around the Waffle YouTube channel and on your podcast service anytime, any place, anywhere. It's time to hit the road. Let's see you at the footy this weekend. It's going to be a big one. We'll see you soon.